In the late 1600s, dramatic changes were transforming how people lived. Scientific and political changes, industry and trade. American seaports were thriving, especially the town of Salem. Merchants were making money, gaining power. But next door in Little Salem Village, Puritan farmers were struggling to maintain a simpler life. The new worldliness of Salem town threatened the farmers' Puritan values. There was no love lost between town and village. Family rivalries and the village's desire for independence from the town divided the town and village.
The news came from York about the Indian raid, not all that far away, and people must have been terrified.
We go astray as soon as we are born. Undutiful children are the children of Satan, and unto Satan they shall go into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels.
Ann Putnam, have you seen this woman hurt you?
Yes, she beat me this morning.
Rebecca Nurse, do you not see these afflicted persons and hear them accuse you?
Lord God knows I have not hurt them. I am an innocent person.
It is very awful to see these agonies. And yet you stand dry-eyed when there are so many wet.
You do not know my heart.
What a sad thing it is that a church member should be thus accused and charged. Do you believe that these afflicted persons are bewitched?
Yes. Yes, I do think they are.
They have accused you of hurting them. If you think it is by design, then you must look upon them as murderers.
I cannot tell what I think.
What do you think of this?
I cannot help it. The devil may take my shape. Take my shape.
When Rebecca Nurse was found innocent, her accusers erupted, insisting her specter was attacking them. Chief Justice Stoughton told the jury to reconsider. It did, this time, guilty. July 19th, Rebecca Nurse was executed, then excommunicated. Over the summer of 1692, the convicted witches, 19 of them, were carted through the streets of Salem town to Gallows Hill. Instead of confessing, they forgave their accusers and prayed they would be the last innocent people executed. With a crowd all around, they were hanged, several at a time.
It were better that 10 suspected witches should go free than that one innocent person die. I'd rather judge a witch to be a honest woman than judge a honest woman to be a witch.
Civil suits were brought to recover property of the accused. Those already found guilty were pardoned. The remaining accused were tried and exonerated. No one would ever die again in our country convicted as a witch.
When the witchcraft was all over, Salem Village was really decimated by how many innocent people had been hanged, how many families had been disrupted. And the village, really for generations, just didn't want to talk about the witchcraft anymore. Witch hunts aren't something of the dark past. They're still something that draws us in today. Too often we might think that, oh, we're talking about something that happened 300 years ago. We're talking about Puritans who were superstitious. They weren't very sophisticated. They happened to hang a bunch of witches. What's that got to do with us? When in fact, when we talk about a witch hunt, we're talking about any time in which a community of people find easy scapegoats to difficult questions, things they don't understand. It's as easy for us to understand it today when we look to our recent past, how the Japanese Americans were treated at the beginning of World War II, thrown in basically concentration camps. I think we, in our own time, must be able to watch for witch hunts in any form and in any guise with as much clear vision, bravery, and integrity as we can muster.
And each year, some million visitors flock to Salem to take in the Witch Museum, stand in the stocks outside the Witch Dungeon, and stop at the Witch's Brew Cafe. Even the streets in Salem have a witch connection. The stereotypical image of the evil witch on a broomstick has become the town's symbol. It's made an industry out of its history. Salem and Danvers are in some ways still very much the same. One very commercial, the other the small town neighbor that quietly remembers.
Until this week, no one knew exactly where 19 people accused of witchcraft were hanged. And now they do. It's Proctor's Ledge in Salem, Massachusetts. The revelation from a group of scholars who say they were able to identify the location using court records and maps, radar, and aerial photographs. One of those researchers is here. Emerson Tad Baker is a Salem State University professor of history who helped pinpoint the location of these executions. He's also the writer of a recent book, A Storm of Witchcraft, The Salem Trials and the American Experience. So just the right person to talk to, Tad, about this. Before we launch into why this was an important discovery and why there was passion behind this project, take us back to 1692 and what happened in Salem.
Sure. Well, it was the largest outbreak of witchcraft in American history. Over 150 people were formally accused of witchcraft. The jails overflowed. 19 people were tried, convicted, and executed in one of our darkest moments in American history.
And based on your research, were people actually practicing witchcraft?
Well, there may have been what we would call white magic or white witchcraft. Back then, they would consider things like fortune-telling or using a Ouija board. So technically, yes, right? But no one was actually forming pacts with Satan and killing people through Satan's power, as we all know.
Now, the people that were actually hanged, the 19 people hanged, were any of them proven to be witches?
These were, ironically, over 50 people confessed to being witches in Salem, and the real tragedy is all of those people lived, and it was only those people who refused to lie and say they were witches to save themselves who died. So that's why to us it's so important that we memorialize this site and mark it, because it is a real tragedy about heroes who stood by their convictions and refused to lie before God.
So hundreds of years have passed, and now you're still in this project. Just take us back a few months ago where you weren't exactly sure where these hangings happened. Why was it important to you and others to find the precise location?
Well, Salem has lived in the shadow of the witch trials for more than 300 years, and witchcraft tourism is a big thing today that helps with the city's economy. And there's other people who really want to take steps to commemorate that loss. So this site has been found and lost several times in the past, and we just think it's really important that the collective amnesia of these dark times is removed, and that we actually finally mark the site and allow people to visit the site and know what happened there. Really, kind of ground zero in 1692.
We're showing a map, and I'm just asking our control room to keep it up because it is a little ironic. Here we're looking at Proctor's Ledge where this happens. It's my understanding it sort of overlooks a Walgreens.
Right, so it's an urban jungle kind of
thing.
So
it's very much in a modern neighborhood. What would you like to happen at this site, and what do you think the recognition of this site means?
Well, right now it is just kind of an overgrown spot where actually kind of like homeless seek shelter. And all we're really asking is that it be cleaned up and be maintained. And the city is eager to do that. And we want a modest memorial. You know, we're right in people's backyards. We're not trying to create another tourist destination, but just a quiet, reflective place where people who would like to can go there and pay their respects.
When you reflect and pay your respects, Tad, what goes through your mind after doing all the research that you've done over the years on this topic?
Well, you know, I was amazed at how much it hit me when the news broke on this, on how important this was to me, because as historians, we often deal with the past, and here we are, I think, really sort of helping shape Salem's present and its future, and correcting a wrong that's been there for so many, many years.
An Idaho Falls woman has written a book about one of her own ancestors, an accused witch and a victim of the mass hysteria that swept Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. As Local News 8's Luke Jones reports, this book was decades in the making.
Although she lived more than 300 years ago, you could still see some of Bridget Bishop, the famously accused Salem witch, in local author Laura Jo de Mordaunt.
I am a strong-willed individual, and I stand up for the things I believe in, and I guess that's been passed down.
That's because de Mordaunt and Bishop share a bloodline. Fascinated by her family's dark history, de Mordaunt says she began researching Bishop 35 years ago.
I have been back to Salem and into the Library of Congress, studying old documents, reading books.
What she discovered became the inspiration for this book, which details Bishop's life and the times in which she lived.
I would call her probably the first American feminist.
She owned her own businesses and wore brightly colored clothing, all of which de Mordaunt says made Bishop an easy target for accusations of witchcraft.
She allowed her taverns to be open late in the evening, and for the sailors to come in to play shuffleboard and to bet and throw the dice and play cards and dance. I'm naming all the things that the Puritans hated.
De Mordaunt says Bishop was convicted using something called spectral evidence. Essentially, witnesses could testify about things they saw in dreams.
This is where she was accused of looking at a baby and then the baby died. Her spectra was on top of this man beating him.
De Mordaunt says we can all learn from what happened to Bishop.
What happened to her is probably still happening today, where we accuse people wrongly for something they did, and then we don't let people be individualistic.
Bridget Bishop was the first of 20 women who were hanged as witches during the Salem witch trials.